In the past 4 years, the number of recorded shoplifting incidents has more than doubled, but the problem is much worse than official statistics because many go unrecorded. In 2024, there were an estimated 20 million incidents of shoplifting in England and Wales, resulting in only 31,000 prosecutions.
1,000 times a day, this is what's going on somewhere in Britain. A shoplifter helping himself from the shelves of the co-op before just walking out.
This is a 5-fold increase in shoplifting since 2014, with the police seemingly powerless to stop the organised crime wave. Shops have been forced to spend on private security guards and security tags on cheese, milk and baby food. Knife crime has also been soaring, with a near doubling of knife offences and a significant increase in sentencing for the possession of a knife. Yet, according to the most widely used crime survey of England and Wales, we are actually seeing a sharp decrease in victim-based crime in the past 3 decades, down from 12 million to 4 million today. Now, it is worth pointing out, this is a survey, not police statistics. It excludes non-victim-based crimes like shoplifting, where the business, of course, is the victim. But using Home Office statistics for reported crime offences, this has actually ticked up since 2015, though it is still lower than 2004. Now, the main problem with police statistics is that they ignore unreported crimes and methodology can change. So what is going on, and which crime statistics should we be trusting? And we are all horrified by the increasing violence on our streets and by the ever-rising crime figures. This is a speech that could be given by any politician over the past 40 years. It was actually Mrs. Thatcher in 1982, and she had a point. In the early 1980s, crime by many metrics was even worse than today. In fact, crime soared throughout the 80s, peaking in early 1990. And for crimes like burglary, car-related crime and violence, there has been a big drop in recent decades. And this, by the way, is not a phenomenon related to the UK. It is also mirrored across other countries around the world. Yet many remain sceptical of crime statistics for a number of reasons. Firstly, when it comes to official stats, the reporting of crime is haphazard. Just 25% of headline crime is actually reported to the police, according to the crime survey. Many respondents say that the police could not do anything or would not have been bothered. And there is actually good reason to be sceptical the police would do anything about crime, because whilst crime rates may be coming down, the conviction rate is also coming down too, from 15% of offences resulting in a charge to just 7% in 2024. In fact, this partly speaks to the changing nature of crime. There has been a decline in what we might call amateur burglary, car theft and bank robberies, but there has been an increased professionalisation of crime, with shoplifting gangs and mobile phone theft gangs highly organised, with long supply chains for offloading the stolen goods and selling on in other countries. The days of the Del Boy-style local criminal selling rubber ducks down the local pub are declining. Crime is becoming more sophisticated. For example, fraud is up 65%. But falling conviction rates are not just down to greater professionalism of criminals. It also reflects a greater burden of proof. The Economist reports a police officer who says back in the day you could just say, "I saw him do it." Now a case may need 20 kinds of evidence. Another reason for falling conviction rates is a big growth in people reporting sexual offences, a reflection of the fact that more people are willing to come forward than in the past, but the charge rate for sexual offences has always been notoriously low, around 4.2%. So if many types of crime are supposed to be coming down, why do people think crime is getting worse? Well, interestingly, we tend to see the national situation as much worse than our local area. In 2024, 70% think there is more crime at a national level, but only 36% feel there was more crime in our own local area. Perceptions of our local area are influenced by our direct experience. The national level is more influenced by media and social media, which have a long history of magnifying fears over crime. Also, perceptions of crime can be heavily influenced by your own personal experience. If you've had your phone snatched off you on the street, you may well feel unimpressed by the fact that carjacking is 80% down on 1990. It doesn't alter the pain of being robbed yourself. Now, going back to the 1980s, I remember as a young child being very keen on football, but my parents didn't want me going to watch Leeds United because of the widespread violence and hooliganism of the early 80s, which was a very real problem. Ironically, the only football I saw was watching non-league Morecambe when visiting relatives in that part of the world. But for all the talk of a more panic about declining standards, you can't ignore that the era of hooliganism on the football terraces is largely a thing of the past. These days, the problem is more like the daylight robbery of Premier League ticket prices and football clubs going under, despite the sport being awash with money. But anyway, let's not get into that. Another personal example, when I went to Oxford University, you have this perception that Blackbird Leeds was a dangerous council estate. It was referred to as the joyriding capital of England. But after leaving university, I ended up cycling through the area just about every day, and you realise that the media-influenced perceptions were mostly wrong. And by the way, when it comes to car crime, whether you use police stats or surveys, the general downward trend is very clear. You just can't hotwire a modern car for a start, and these days maybe people are just happy playing Grand Theft Auto on a computer. But a very good question to ask is, if crime rates are falling, how come the prison population is reaching record levels? And the prison population certainly is rising to record levels. It's one of the highest in Europe. Now, there are three main factors behind the rising prison population. Firstly, changes to sentencing guidelines have led to longer sentencing. Serious offences are between 38 to 80% longer from back in 2008. Secondly, there are more prisoners on remand, a reflection of a backlog of criminal court cases and waiting times for cases to be heard. Thirdly, those recalled to prison is up very sharply, released onto parole and then recalled to prison. But number of people given an immediate custodial sentence actually fell from 98,000 in 2012 to 67,000 in 2022, but overall the prison population is still going up. Basically, we lock people up for longer, and you could well ask whether that is partly behind the decline in crime rates. Now, another way of measuring crime is through hospital admissions for violence. Now, hospital admissions for the under-17s has increased, and worryingly the number of deaths from knife crime amongst young people has increased 141% since 2013. Yet, if we look at the wider total population, the number of assault admissions has actually fallen from 45,000 to 20,000. If we look at the homicide rate for the UK, it's at a relatively similar level to the 1970s, lower than in the mid-2000s. Also interesting is the rise in the percentage of women who feel safe walking alone after dark, just 45% in 1995, 68% in 2025, though interesting the survey size has shrunk since the 1990s. So of all these different conflicting crime stats, what is actually going on? Well, some types of crime are coming down. In particular, much better security for things like cars and houses have helped. Violent offences are also lower than in the late 80s and early 90s. Yet, also at the same time, there is a worrying rise in violence and knife crime amongst children. The decline in crime rates measured in a survey is real. Yet the crime surveys also pick up declining confidence in the police, which is justified given the falling conviction rates. Also, the crime surveys miss some important factors. You may be less likely to have your home burgled than in the past, but shop prices may well be higher because of the shoplifting epidemic. Also, while some crime falls, there are concerns about a fraying of the social fabric, not helped by cuts to local youth services and a decline in community-minded institutions. So to answer the question, is crime rising or falling? Well, some crime really is falling, but also some crime is rising. Depending on which measure you use, you could argue that overall crime rates are lower than in the 1990s, but we're hardly living in a new paradise of safety and security. So be wary of politicians brandishing crime statistics. There's more to look under the surface.